With 100 metres to go, is the strength of David McCarthy's background at 3,000 and 5,000 and cross country going to stand to him? Here comes Everard. It's not going to stand to him. Everard has timed it brilliantly, absolutely superbly timed right to the line. 3:44.58. He let McCarthy do all the hard work. John Cochran has taken the bronze medal. It was just too far out for David McCarthy to take the lead. You had that sense that he was there to be shot at if one person from the pack, one athlete from the pack went after him. And Everard has got past David McCarthy right at the line. Eoin Everard has turned last year's silver into gold.
Hey, it's Ben Wise, and this is The Fitness Movement. The Fitness Movement is brought to you by Zor Fitness. Zor Fitness is my company and my platform to deliver training content to coaches and athletes like you. The site has educational resources on everything from program design and exercise physiology to skill progressions and movement breakdowns. And in terms of programming, we have our online training program, The Protocol, and I also offer one-on-one remote coaching. It's all at one place, zorfitness.com. Today I have Eoin Everard on the show. He is a professional runner. He has a PhD in biomechanics. He's a physiotherapist. He's a certified athletic therapist, and he is a Pilates instructor. Let me run down some of his personal bests. 800 meters, 148. 1500 meters, 339. 1 mile run, 358. 3000 meters, 803. 5000 meters, 13:58, and in the 10,000 meters, he recently broke the 30-minute mark. Today, we talked about what game day looked like for Eoin when he's going from waking up until the gun goes off at his race, what the actual prep for that event looked like. We talked about how that warm-up might differ if it was a shorter event like an 800 versus a much longer event like a 10K or a 10 mile. We talk about where his head's at when he's actually in an event and what he's focusing on while he's running, what kind of training structure he followed, and how other people who are listening who are more recreational runners can improve their running with similar techniques. We talked about the types of sessions he was getting in a week, and if something like weekly run volume is something that other athletes should be focusing on. We talk about whether to manipulate or not technique and breathing as it impacts performance, and we end by Eoin giving his advice to younger runners how to elicit their best performance without sacrificing their joy for the sport. I start off by asking Eoin, which event in his career is he most proud of?
Probably two definitely. The first would be when I was a junior, so under 20s, under 18s. I was trying to qualify for the European Championships, and I came up just coming up short time and time again, one time by 0.01 of a second. Yeah, crazy. And I was going to these races and getting close, but not getting there. And then I just gave up at the end of the season because the deadline was passed. And then the Athletics Ireland rang me and said, here, listen, we'll extend the deadline one more week. And there's the UK Championships are on and you can get into that. And honestly, I'd said no initially. I was like, oh, you know what? I'm just too emotionally kind of spent to do it and haven't got it. And my brother was like, look, you've been trying this all summer. You've been training for it all year. Just give it one more try. So booked a really cheap flight, was eating KFC that day because it's oh, let's go here. I was sleeping under a tree because the hotel room wasn't ready for ages. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah. And crazy, just perfect night and ran a PR by over a second and qualified for the Europeans. So that was always
which distance was that?
800 meters.
800 meters. Do you remember what you ran it in?
Oh yeah. It's etched. Everything in that is etched in my brain. I know the songs I was listening to. So 150.23 is what I ran that day. And I just remember the high of, that persistence that's required, and you just do not know when your day is going to come. And that's actually been kind of a theme for me throughout my career, is that when things were supposed to come, they didn't. But I kept kind of staying in it, stayed enjoying running. And then I had success, say, later. So again, I ran like 4 minutes dead for a mile, came second in the national championships. I nearly kind of retired, but I just kept plugging away. And the following year, I ran sub 4 minutes for the mile, and that was just great. That you just have that set goal that you just really wanted, and then to achieve it. Because any other time you run a fast time, but there's always like a faster time you could run. When I ran that, I was like, oh my God, I've done it. And that was the same when I broke 14 minutes for 5K. So those three really stand out. I could tell you a lot about those days.
I'd actually love to hear more. You can pick either one, either that 800 meters or the mile that you want to dive into here. But kind of take me through like what the day of that race looks like, from like basically as much detail as you can tolerate giving me, from like you wake up until like the gun goes off. Like take me through, what does that process look like for you?
Perfect. Yeah. So I'd go the mile because that's more typical.
Okay.
Now sometimes we race abroad, but that race had been in Ireland. There's a famous mile race called the Morton Mile. A lot of American top milers come over.
One question before we jump into this: how common is a mile versus like a 1600 or 1500?
Like not common at all now.
Yeah. That's what I assumed. Yeah.
Yeah. Indoor, the US, they still do the mile a lot. Right. Everywhere else, it's all 1500 meter running.
Right.
So if you want to break a mile, you only get like 1 or 2 chances max in the year, because everything else is the 1500 meters. And you could say you could have an equivalent time.
So is most of that in like countries outside the United States? Like, is it sort of like just almost like, I don't want to call it like a token race, but like to like be able to like check off that big milestone and maybe 100%. Like a sub 4 minute mile.
Everybody running a mile is basically doing it because they want to break 4.
Right.
Or it's like in the past people knew about it, but for all the major championships, like I would have gone to European championships over 1500 meters. Everything is 1500 meters.
Yeah, it's like a club. If you get into the 4 minute mile club, I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah, and it's funny, right? So when I was in there, I've only done it like once and then 4 minutes twice, but like once you did it, I could never care about doing it again. I was just then get my 1500 meter time down, Right. So it's funny, once you've done it, you're like let's get the 1500 meter down, because you can qualify for European championships and stuff.
Right.
So I'll take through a day. So most races are on in the nighttime. This race is going to be on about like 9:30 in Ireland. A lot of times you're on like 7 o'clock. So you wake up, you just have your normal breakfast, say like porridge, your flaxseed. You start just kind of hydrating. I don't like to overly hydrate though. I think it's something people do when they're nervous. They drink a lot, and that can put like pressure on your kidneys and your bladder, because it's working overload compared to what normally it is. So I'd have my normal liter of water with some lemon in it. I'm probably not going to have that much work on that day. You're probably just going to try keep a very light day. You'll always go for a 10-minute jog in the morning of the race. It just allows you to feel a little bit looser and more relaxed later on for your race. So that's something you do. So
is it just like a straight 10-minute jog? Like you walk out the door
really
and just start kind of getting into it?
Exactly. Yeah. You might have your breakfast. You might, depending on the time. When it's at 9:30 that evening, it doesn't matter. If it was at, say, like a 2 o'clock race, you'd probably do it just as you woke up, because the differential is very small.
Yeah.
But I find that if I didn't do that, I'd feel like tighter in my warm up, which, even like just psychologically might put you off a little bit.
Do you feel like that helps your nerves?
Yeah, definitely. You try not to overly think about the race early on in the day, and I've got much better as I've got older. As I said, the tangent here, so just let me know if you want me to get back on this. But the biggest blessing I've had in running is running terribly for a year, like really bad, because I realized like nobody cares. Now I know you'll have like, say, CrossFit athletes and different people with fitness journeys, but sometimes we can feel like, oh, I'm going to let down that person. If not consciously, like subconsciously, if you're getting like nervous for competitions.
Yeah.
But what you realize is when you do terribly, you realize as long as you're happy, everybody around you is okay. They're happy for you. If you're upset, they're upset for you. And sometimes you can take that upset that they're upset because you didn't do well, but that's not the case. And that's what I was always like terrified about. So I'd sleep terribly the night before, where I ran like a donkey for a year. And I felt like, then I just realized, God, nobody cares here. Like, but that was brilliant. So you just don't want to use that much emotional energy. So you'll go for a 10-minute jog on the day. Again, you'll probably either totally relax, watch a bit of TV, or you might have a little bit of work, but you don't want to be sitting down a lot that day. Then I'll have my dinner at lunchtime. So like 1 o'clock, I'll have a dinner.
So is that your second meal or third meal?
I don't know, second. So I've had I've had porridge in the morning. You might have like a piece of fruit, like an orange or something, because, without being gross, it's going to pass as well. You wouldn't have a lot of fruit otherwise, maybe a banana or something like that. I'll have my dinner at about 1 o'clock. Either I'll have a dinner early and go to sleep for an hour, or I'll go for a sleep and then have my dinner. So basically dinner and a sleep for an hour is finished by about 2 o'clock. And that kind of takes a lot of pressure off how you sleep the night before, because you're like, well, at least I'll lie down, I'll relax. Again, I might then, 2 hours might pass. Then say if we said let's say the race is at 8 o'clock for simplicity. The last big meal, you'll have 2 like sandwiches 4 hours out, and you'll be sipping water. We'll drive up to the race. So we're about an hour and a half away. So I like to get to the track then at an hour and a half before the race. Don't like to wait there too long.
Yeah.
I get there an hour and a half before the race. On the way up, 2.5 hours to go. So you'll have sandwiches at 4 hours. You'll have a banana at like 3.5 hours beforehand. And then 2.5 hours beforehand is like a little kind of energy bar. They're like Nutrigrain 11s, like little bar. And I used to take like a beetroot shot. I don't take them anymore. Apparently they don't help elite athletes, but I used to take two of those at 2.5 hours before. And then 2 hours to 1 hour before, we'll start sipping on like Gatorade. My plan is to take like, say, 500 mils of Gatorade in between 2 hours and 1 hour. When we get up an hour and a half before, because I've been driving for about 2 hours or hour and a half, I'll have my hockey ball or lacrosse ball, and I'll start just working out the glutes. You might have your foam roller. So start just doing like 10, 15 minutes max, nice and light work, just to kind of get a little bit looser. Put your feet up on the wall just to kind of stretch out and just try relax. Then about 50 minutes before the race, you'll start then doing a 15-minute jog, which would be about 2 miles, but just nice and easy. I'll come back. I'll do static stretching then, about 10-second holds all the way up. So I'm like rotate my ankles, soleus, gastrocs, hamstrings, quads, glutes, hip flexors. I'll try and mobilize, do hip circles, mobilize the pelvis a little bit, shoulders all the way up. Then I will do I'm still in my normal trainers. I'll do like high knees with like dynamic hamstring stretches back. I'll do bum kicks, but I'll keep my knees out in front rather than flick it behind, because it teaches good mechanics. You don't want to teach poor mechanics. With the quad stretch back, holding for 2 seconds, side to sides with a groin stretch. Then what we'll do we'll be about 20 minutes out now, or maybe 25 minutes out. I'll try get on the track. Sometimes it's a busy race that they're awkward about it, but I usually just hop on and go. And what I'll do is I'll do 200 meters at race pace. And the idea behind that, it's called VO2 kinetics. They say that if you've opened up your lungs for that 30 seconds, a study showed that it took people 6 seconds to get back up to top VO2 max if they've done something in that, say 20 minutes beforehand or 15 minutes beforehand. People who hadn't done that, it took them like 30 to 40 seconds. Now, if you're in a race that's going to last less than 4 minutes, it's important that you can get up to speed straight away. So we'll do that. I'll just walk or jog back in. I'll take off my normal trainers. I would have had, like, say, those tights on, or you'll have your tracksuit bottoms on. I'll get into my shorts. Oh, sorry, one other thing. The other last thing I would have taken is like a caffeine, kind of like a powder or like a tablet, like an hour beforehand. The one I use is pre-race by, I don't even know who it's from. It's for like triathletes or things. So we'll have that caffeine.
Yeah.
If it's a big race, I'll take 1 scoop an hour. And then after that jog, I might take a tiny little top up. But you ain't sleeping for a good while.
Is that something you've always done? When did you start implementing that?
Oh, maybe like at 24, 25. My friend, every runner does that, but like he was one of the first, say, and I just remember he's like, take this, because there's taurine and caffeine in it. Like, it's legal. Like, you obviously have to check, because we be drug tested. But I remember the race was delayed, and I was like, I'm super passive, and I was like super aggressive.
Is that something you ever do just in training, or is that
never,
solely for
never.
work? Are you a coffee drinker or have caffeine normally?
I never even drink coffee ever. So
that's
I
like
just
the only time you really have that stimulant.
Yeah. And then I'll be like hopped up. If my wife wasn't there, I'll be talking to her like crazy, or like sleeping is hard that evening, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, she could just get off the phone. I'd say she just like hangs up and I'm still talking. or it's like, I forget that, like, because I've just like planned the day with sleep, with all your eating to be like peaking at like, say, 8 or 9 o'clock. By the time the race is over, you cool down, it's like 10.
Yeah.
Like on a normal night, like we're like old people, we go to bed at like 10:30.
You're still hyped
so
up.
She could be in bed and I'm like buzzing on the phone chatting to her. So
quick question.
Sorry, I just
so
finished
you don't
there, and then we do, oh sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say, so yeah, I mean, you don't normally have caffeine, so now you do. You find that obviously like that's gonna have some performance benefits, but you don't feel like that has like a negative impact in terms of like jitters or being like super anxious before your race, or is that just not your personality type?
No, I don't find that. Now I know a guy, he takes ridiculous amount of caffeine because it is performance enhancing caffeine. Like the only reason it's not banned at excessive levels is that Coca-Cola like sponsor a lot of events.
Yeah.
Like that is it. Honestly, it used to be banned and they're like, here, listen, you can't have something in our drink that you're telling people isn't allowed. Like, so, but I know guys who would be like fall starting in long distance races like I'm doing. And I don't think, like, even, as I said, I've been like drug tested for years and all, but even I find like that people who like would take drugs, that micro dosing is, I think, more appropriate. And the same with caffeine. It's like taking the required amount. People think by taking loads more, it's going to be better, but it's not. Like, so, but the other thing as well, though, is people sometimes say, oh, try it in training and see if it suits you. I don't believe that. It's like a competition cannot be replicated, you know? So even if it feels okay in training, there has to be some type of like competition, but that you don't care how it goes, or like you're hoping to do well. That's the only thing you can do. So I never try anything in training, and then if it works, bring it in. I just go straight in, and then I'll try it. I'll try it straight away, and then if it works.
Let's say in around this time when we're speaking about for this sub 4 minute mile, how many times are you like competing in a year? Like, how many competitive races are you doing?
Oh, about 7 or 8. I'd say this is about my 6th race.
Yeah. So when you say it's a competition thing, it's not like you're gearing up and doing one competition a year, and it's like you have to take 4 years to calibrate to figure out what the right, dosing for you is. The learning curve's a little bit steeper because you're competing so often. So
this is it.
You can kind of optimize for competing because you know what you need almost.
Yeah, and exactly. Like, that's a good point, that if you're going to do a marathon, say, and I would recommend you to do a half marathon, 10 mile, 10K if you're going to do that. Or if you have a competition and it's just one, say, an Olympic lifting competition or a CrossFit, like maybe you have like a trial event that
Yeah.
you're taking serious, try it in that, or if it's a
Right.
fight.
Like
But make
simulate
sure
your
it's something that you're
competition.
serious,
Yeah.
simulate a competition and then
Right.
do it. Don't just think, oh, I took that in training and I didn't feel any benefit, or I took it in training. Like you're not going to know until you simulate in some kind of competition.
Yeah. And it's also not like you're gonna take, this, you're not going to eat the same when when you're going to compete. Like you're not going to do like that basically taper of like 4 hours I'm doing this, 3 hours I'm doing this, 2 hours I'm doing this for like just like a workout on like a regular weekday. Like that's not realistic.
Before I ran terribly, I used to be kind of like that. I'd have like set routines. Was a bit anal on it all, but the best thing was running crap. And after that, I just way more relaxed. Just get the training in when you can and keep that emotional energy like relaxed. I call it keeping the tiger in the cage.
Yeah.
Everything you should finish like 90% effort. Always feel like you can do one more rep.
Perfect. All right. So I think we were like 20 minutes out from your race. You want to keep walking us through?
Okay. So we would have done our high knees. We would have done that one stride. We're now getting into our like specialized shoes, which are spikes. We'll just do high knees with strides, bum kicks with strides, and then 3 strides about 50 or 60 meters with walk back recovery. We're just drinking water here now. We get called into the start line about 10 minutes beforehand. And then it's just kind of shaking out your legs, a couple of little strides, then just like 10 high knees to kind of potentiate. Last 5 minutes, I try to get very relaxed. Always do, like Stuart McGill would talk about it for Olympic lifters, where they should like roll back, let their tongue kind of go floppy and drop your arms. And he would say for Olympic lifters to do that before they try a lift, because what you're trying to do is just like down-regulate the system, then come in and go. So that's kind of what I do. So it's a couple of strides, it's down, it's shake out the legs, and then we're on the line and then bang.
That's super interesting. I think one of the mistakes that I would guess from a lot of people that I work with, but also a lot of amateur runners, is they understand they need to warm up. They do a lot of the stuff that you described, where they might do like an easy jog, then some like calisthenics, then maybe like a rehearsal of some type at like race pace. But then it's like, that's, 3 minutes before the gun goes off. And, all the systems are still like, there's still a little bit of fatigue in the system, versus allowing enough time and like allowing, like basically getting yourself a little bit hyped up furtherness away, where then you can kind of like calm yourself back down and like get all the systems to basically recover fully. And then you start.
100%. Yeah. So you could see that like the hardest rep I had would be like 20, 25 minutes out. Because as you said, once the body is warm and activated, it's very quick to get it back to that stage. So the last 10 minutes should be more like I'll actually sit down sometimes, shake out my legs, have that water. It's just about not, as you said, not being super pumped then. It's about being more relaxed. Yeah, 100%.
All right, let's walk through specifically this 1 mile run. The gun goes off. Take us through like where you're at physically and mentally throughout that race.
Okay, so I had ran a mile like 2 weeks before, and I've been on 4-minute mile pace till 200 meters left, and then I just got hit by the couple of lactic bullets. The sniper just was taking me out. Yeah. But it's funny, and I ran like 36 seconds rather than 30. But it's funny, I kind of had a feeling after doing that, yeah, you know what, I'm getting better in shape, because I didn't feel I'll be ready. And I was like, if I get there again, I think I'll be able to do it. So the funny thing about running at that level is my wife would always say, if a race didn't go well, it's like, I just couldn't get relaxed at the start. She's like, yeah, but we've not just like push yourself, because she just doesn't have a clue. Like, but I tell her at that level, a race is like playing the piano more than it is trying to gut it out. So it's like about like, if you were listening to an expert pianist, it's not like, oh yeah, really go for it there. It's like, you just got to be smooth and relaxed. So the idea is like, you get out at the pace, you'll see the time every 200 meters, but it's about trying to like, just be really flowy. What you want to feel is that like, it should feel easy. Now that's the hard thing. because a lot of times I've been in races and you're 400 meters in, you're like, oh, this doesn't feel easy.
Yeah.
And you're struggling. But that race it felt comfortable. We went through at like 1:59. Then because I was like, I really had that on my head, we went through like, say, 2:59. I was like, oh my God. I was like, I'm going to do it. And you're trying not to panic. And
Yeah.
as I said, the last one I blew up with 200 meters left. So you're like, oh God, this better not happen.
You're like
and
waiting almost.
You're kind of waiting. And then 200 meters left, I was like, no, you feel great. Just go. And then I just like put the hammer down last 200 meters just to make sure you don't miss out. So yeah, like that, like across the line, and I could see the time. It was 3:58 I ran. So it was well beneath it. So it wasn't like I had to wait to find the official time, and my friends were there. And it was just like, as I said, a lot of times you either don't know what you've ran or you even run your best and you're hoping you think you could do more. That was just such an elation of like, I've done it. I have done it. This is what I wanted and I've done it. So that was an unbelievable feeling. Yeah.
So were you checking split times every 400 meters, every 200 meters?
Kind of every 200 and every 400. Like the best with that race in particular, I was running every, like, just giving a quick glance, because you don't want to kind of get transfixed on the time. You want to, as you said, it's like, you want to kind of feel in the moment that you're like, say there's a guy, because they have a pacemaker. So they have it like, we're just in a train of guys running around. So you just want to make sure it's just like a quick glance to be like, all right, yeah, that was 59 seconds. That was like 1:59. Because you want to stay relaxed as possible, but then you just want to make sure that like this relaxed isn't too relaxed. So that's all you're looking for. And then if you feel one guy drop, it's like as smooth as you can move past him.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, like, as you said, it's like playing the piano. It's like any spike, you're kind of on your limit. So any like big surge or drop, it's much harder to get back. It's like you're just right on that knife edge and you're just trying to stay as relaxed as you can at that speed. And then at the end, obviously you're going all out, but it's like, for the first bit, the first half, like with any race, even 5K, especially 5K marathons, 10Ks, we always say like run the first half with your head and then the second half with your heart. So you should always feel easy. I remember my friends, right? We were in a 5K, I won it, and he was there at the start till about 3K and then he just fell apart. And like he was leading it from 1K to like 2.5K.
Yeah.
And afterwards we were cooling down. It was like, I don't know, I just felt so good. I just had to pick it up. I was like, Toss, everybody felt good. We were 1K into a race.
Yeah.
If you ain't feeling good 1K in, you are in serious, serious trouble. So it's all about trying to stay as relaxed as you can, not panic, quick glance at the clock just to make sure it's like, and when it's going well, it's like you just basically give a quick glance, you're on time and you're feeling easy. And you're like, I can't believe how this feels.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the goal, is like when you go by and you glance, it's like you want to be on pace. And if you're not on pace, either way, either high or low, it's not good. But you also don't want to be like super reactive to that, where it's like, I'm sure, again, if I think of someone who's a little bit more of an amateur runner, like if they go around and they wanted to be at, so like 75 seconds on the 400 and they're at 77 and they're like, oh no. And they like pick it up and they start running really hard. And then again, they're going to spill over. And obviously like, that's where you're saying like they're losing like that smoothness or like that, 100%. That easy running. And then they're going to pay for it when they get to the, 90% into the race and they're supposed to kick.
Yeah, like exactly. If we just say at those levels, say if you have someone who's doing, say a 10K or 6 miles, say if the first mile you run say you want to run 5 minutes, which would be quick. If the first mile goes 5:10, don't run a 4:50. You will fry your legs.
Yeah.
Like the best thing to do is go back, run 5 minutes and then eat down from there. Right. So like if you run too quick, you need to just drop very gently back to the target pace, see how that feels. And then at the end of the race, that's when you can start taking back the time. But as you said, I see that loads of times where people go too high and then absolutely drop the hammer fry their legs, and then then you're doing the skeleton dance, as we call it, down the home straight.
Oh, that's funny. So let's say you're running two very different races, like 800 meters versus like a 10K. Compared to that warm up that you described to us earlier, does that change at all versus
Not
either
much
of those
different.
races?
You're just not much different, actually. The one thing that changes is the pace. You always do about 30 seconds, but 30 seconds at 10K pace is slower. So don't go do that flat out. Just do that off what the pace is going to be. You might, for a 10K, you might reduce your warm up very slightly. I wouldn't actually. I would just do the exact same warm up.
Yeah.
For even for a marathon, I would probably still do a 10-minute warm up, then the drills, those strides, and then just relax a little bit more.
So
the only thing that sorry, go on. The only thing that really changes for those races is in an 800 and a 1500. It's like you're trying to you just try to stay relaxed, or in your head you're like, I'm relaxed, but you're running very quick, and then after the race you're like, oh my god, I'm in bits. With the 10K and longer distances, it is more of a yo-yo. You are not going to feel relaxed the whole time. So it's like trying not to panic. Like I did a 10 mile in like say 49, like sub 50 minutes, but like in that race, like 1 mile in, I was feeling great. The next mile in, I was feeling terrible. So it's just like trying to stay on the pace, knowing that, look, it'll come back around, and then you'll have a mile where it might feel terrible. So the longer distances do need a little bit more of that, like grit, and just like, look, hold. Now that's slightly different than, if you're going to the red line, like be perceptive to your body. If you feel like, geez, no, I'm working really hard, I'm breathing heavy, pull back earlier in the race, and you might be able to save yourself later, as opposed to sometimes people are redlining and then invariably they will fall back, so it's that's just a distinction.
I think it depends what kind of form you're into. If someone's, again, a little bit more of a novice athlete and they don't have basically the aerobic system support going up close to that red line the whole time, then I find that those type of people, like, they're better off like not going up to, if there's someone who's mentally tough, not going up to that edge right away, because it's hard to sustain that for a longer race. But for someone who is like, if you have the engine to support it, like, you can go up a little bit more aggressive and like kind of be like riding right on your edge. And that's what's 100% necessary to run, these crazy times. Like, you have to be right on like the threshold of what you're capable of the entire time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's such good advice, that for 95% of people out there, the best advice is go easy at the start and pick it up through the race as you feel comfortable. And like for most elites, that's the way it goes as well, where even in 10Ks, it's like you're feeling relaxed at 5K in, and then you're starting to dig deep all the way through. Because worst case, what will happen is you might finish the race and go, I had a little bit more in me. Well, just work out the time you went and start at that pace the next time, and see then can you gradually kind of keep going up and up. Because I've qualified for 10K cross country Irish, like Europeans, purely because I know how to race. I honestly would start off in like 30th. I've been 30th like in the 25th, 26th, and it's only top 6 go. Beside people, honestly, like 1K in, and they're like, and I'm like, honestly, I feel like going to them is like, listen, out of 10, what level, what's your RP right now? Because they have to say 10. It's like, okay, so what's your plan? Because we have 9 more K of this, so you should feel like the majority of the time, the race feels like a tempo pace, because your adrenaline's up. It should feel like what threshold or tempo feels like. And then you keep working. You'll know it's like, okay, I can get that next guy. I get that next guy, and you get the momentum. And I've done that. Honestly, I've qualified for Irish teams. I've come top 10, and I've always been in like the 30th. One year in the first lap, I was in like the 40th, and just started getting through people.
And that's a great feeling. Like when it's such a better feeling to start off under threshold. We're very close to that, and like pick up as you're able to. Yeah. But then you're also picking off people. Like you're running by people, you're passing them, which like builds your momentum versus going out too hard, redlining, feeling like you're spilling over and not really able to sustain your pace. And then you're also getting passed by people behind you. Those are two very different like places to be as an athlete.
Like one guy said to me before, and it's such a good line, Dave McCarthy. He was talking to a guy who was trying to break 8 minutes for 3K. And his plan was, I want to go out in like 350 and basically I'll have time in the bank and I can like slow back to that other time.
Yeah, positive splits.
Yeah, he was like, you're trying to plan death. You're trying to plan dying. You can't plan dying. You can't go out and say, oh, I'm going to die a little bit. It's like when you die, you don't know what's going to happen. So you're so much better like be in control and try push forward at the end. And nearly every world record has come that way, where they're all negative splits.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I think that, again, a lot of the people who are listening to this and trying to pick up stuff like, yeah, just starting a little bit easier and building into it is always a better way to go.
Like so much so. And then, as you said, look, there's always other races. You can readjust and go quicker the next day and see can you hold. But you'll find that you get so much more out of yourself. And as well, it'll feel easier. It always feels easier. Because as you say,
especially
Ben,
in training, if momentum. You do that in training, oh man, it's a long training session when you do that. It's a long race when you do that, but training is its own thing. So one of the things I've heard you talk about
just to say on that,
yeah, go for it.
The Kenyans, they don't let you in a training session. If you can't do the next rep as quick or slightly quicker than the rep before, the training session's finished. For that reason, they don't want you getting sloppy. They don't want you. They're like you've obviously overdone it. Finish.
It's really interesting. I think for a lot of like building type work, where you're basically like the goal is to like improve your systems. I think that is 100% the way to go. Like you get way more quality work in like specifically now about training. Like if you start with like, say you're doing intervals or repeats, if you start like slightly lower and like you pick up that speed and you do again, like those negative splits, whether it's even if it's just a tempo run, I feel like that's way better.
That they do for everything. Like, cause we like my friends have been there, we've trained with the Kenyans and it's like, if they go out crazy and then it was meant to be 6 or 7 reps, say 6 by 7 or 8 miles, 3 miles in, it could be finished because it also teaches you discipline of pace management.
So and I've heard this before and correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard that like, for whatever reason, it seems like a lot of American runners, they'd prefer to get the volume in. And it's like whatever pace I resort to get there is sort of what it ends up being versus a lot of other countries will end up saying like, I'd rather see you hit these paces. And if you can't hit these paces, you're done with the volume.
It depends. There's different types. There's different coaches out there. Some now will be much more on the volume. And like Inge Britsen, say the Norwegian model is very like that. Get your volume in.
That's true.
At a set pace. And then don't worry, like over time, you're just getting so much fitter that we can just kind of sprinkle on speed. And then there's a lot of more like traditional coaches would have been hit your times. And if you die at the end, that's fine. So it just depends on what coach you have. It's important to look at your body and see which one works best for you. Instinctively, if you're working, if you're there, I feel like go easier, get the distance, and don't worry about times, just worry about effort. Like, if you've got kids at home, if you're running from a job, you don't want to be thinking all day, I got to hit like a mile in this time. Just run, say if you normally hit a mile in 6 minutes or 7 minutes, just run 80% or 90% for 7 minutes. Like have a heart rate monitor on and have it like what you roughly are. Because over time, as you said, we don't want that emotional energy super high. Over time, you're just going to get very generally fit. And that's going to work out a lot better.
Yeah, very true. For the average person who doesn't have a lot of volume in just the regular training week, like just accumulating some good work is probably the best thing that they can do rather than trying to hit a specific like time. Because also like, it's sort of a moving target for them. Like they probably don't know exactly what their split should be. And like they haven't just done enough work to really know. And maybe they're not having specific run times like that. They have like a very specific goal. So for example, would imagine like during your prep for, if you have a very specific goal and like I want to run sub 4 in the mile, like exactly what all of your workout splits need to be. What maybe earlier in the season it's more like heart rate based or like again more like volume accumulation, but like as you get closer to the event, I'm guessing it's a lot more like performance based, like split times and that sort of thing. Is that accurate?
That's exactly accurate. And especially the shorter distances, you will get away with the more systems training for like say 5K and above.
Yeah.
But for the shorter ones, like 90% of my workouts there would have been set times. So like my prime workout before that would be like 2 by 800 meters at sub 2. And then like 4 by 200 meters at like 27s. That would be once I hit that session, it's like, yeah, you're good to go. But you'd be doing 4 by 600 meters at race pace, stuff like that, like 8 by 400 meters, because you want to get so comfortable at running at that pace. But even at 3K pace or 800 meter pace, it's all like dialed into what like you should be running, so that you have that feeling, that kind of, the running economy is very important, because as we said, it's like you got to practice running on that knife edge. So you got to kind of do that in training.
Do you think that's just a product of like, you want to be prepared for the race that you want to do, so it's just run as much of your quality volume as you can at race pace?
Do you know what? There's this concept I'm thinking about, Ben. It's called like the neuromuscular athlete versus the aerobic athlete. So a neuromuscular athlete, I'm a neuromuscular athlete. I do see a lot of people can absolutely fry themselves trying to run race specific times in training, because if you're aerobic, your nervous system can't really handle that. So you'll see a lot of people in their college years or doing that training, they burn out quite quickly in the season. So they don't seem to race well throughout the year, because they're doing that kind of intense track work, trying to hit specific times. What that person's better off is using their heart rate, just going in their zones, like the way Jakob Ingebrigtsen is doing. That's like the perfect aerobic training. So he'd be the definition of an aerobic athlete, where everything is based on lactates, which is like his aerobic zones, and then improve those zones so much that even at 1500, he's doing times I can never even dream of doing. Other people need, and I would, one of these, at least 3 to 6 weeks out, need specific workouts that hit the times. Because if I do nothing but system training, like aerobic based training, when I get to a race, it just feels so foreign. I just can't, I feel like panicked trying to run the times. So what I need to do is I need to have done sessions, or we call them sessions, you call them workouts prior to that at race pace, to get comfortable at that feeling in a race. So depending on the type of runner you are, will depend on what type of training you should do.
So when you're saying neuromuscular versus aerobic, you're saying the type of training that an athlete needs to feel at their best when they go to race?
Yeah, you're either predominantly one or the other.
Yeah.
So
you're saying you need either more race pace or more aerobic.
Exactly. And if an aerobic runner does a lot of race pace stuff, they're going to basically not do that well. Usually aerobic runners do well off base training plus some like strides, very little race pace. Their first race is generally very good. They don't seem to improve like crazy amount off the races. Like as long as they keep the aerobic, they shouldn't have a lot of races back to back to back. You know, when I said I did 7 races, I'm neuromuscular. One race seems to really bring me on, and then the next race brings me on again, on again, on again. So like that's because I'm getting used to how it should feel. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't need aerobic, and it doesn't mean that person shouldn't do running economy. It's about what predominantly you should be doing.
Why do you think you respond better to the neuromuscular type training?
I just think it's the way I'm built. I think it's like your genes. I think it's genetic. I think it's like some people, that's what they need. Their nervous system needs to feel that, but then their nervous system's able to tolerate it. Now, it could be I did a lot of that training when I was younger. So, and I was in 800, I was kind of a 400-meter runner. So it's probably like, it is probably more my genes. Like I'm quick. I can probably sustain a lot of work at that level. I have guys who can run just as quick as me. But when we do the same types of workouts, I went on and I ran like 13:58 for 5K. He literally crashed and burned a couple of weeks later. Now, the same guy, when we're doing a race for the first time in a year, he's going to beat me. Because if I haven't done any of that work, I'm just not ready. And then in 2 weeks' time, we'll race again. We'll be close together. And in 2 weeks after that, I might beat him.
Yeah. It's really interesting. So there's this conversation that I have with a lot of coaches and even athletes who are kind of a little bit more cerebral, where it's like, do you want to train more of like what you're not as good at so that those things improve and it like isn't like a weakness anymore to you? So like for you, maybe it's like, would you train more of your aerobic system to try to bring that system up? Or would you rather lean into like what you're going to adapt to quicker, which again, for you might be like, I might run more of like these threshold and above type paces that are mimicking more of my race. And that'll be like more of a like powerful repeats. And now I'll adapt to that quicker. And I should instead focus more in that and lean into that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think the latter, I believe is the only way to go. I believe like genetically people are set certain ways. And then you have to tailor. It's not even a thing of what do you want to, it's like you have to tailor training based on the type of runner the person is. And if you don't, they're never going to get the results they should.
Yeah. Super interesting.
Yeah. It's something I've been working. It's only kind of new in my head. It's just, it's how I started thinking about it is I went to a new coach who had been doing really well with some of my friends as I was trying to break, say, 14 minutes for 5K, 30 minutes for 10K. And he was completely aerobic, like just 5 by 7 minutes at marathon pace, like but off heart rate, lactic. And I was super fit. I was doing like 80 plus miles a week. I was like, my heart rates were coming down, and I went into races and I would be literally bombing out, like just terrible out the back because the pace felt crazy. You
just didn't feel like you had the gears.
I didn't have the gears. Like it was just whereas my friends who literally were doing the same training as me, they would just seem naturally be able to get on that pace. And then I was like, listen, I was chatting to another guy. It's like, I need to do some specific work. I do the specific work and it really works for me that year. The next year, the coach is like, okay, well, we'll all do that type of specific work. The guy who had ran well ran crap and I ran really well.
Yeah.
So it was just like, it's like, if you focus on the wrong things, not only this is a preference, in my opinion, this is like, it's like crucial that you do the right thing. Like if I got Jakob Ingebrigtsen and I ran him very hard, like relative to him, it would be crazy. Like I had a friend, Nick McCormack, he went to the 2012 Olympics, but in like so he had a coach that was very aerobic. Like his threshold was unbelievable. Like it's not hard to know what you're good at. If you would rather the longer like threshold work, if you're like, I can do that all day.
Yeah, if just someone's just like to ask you like, hey, which workout would you rather do, these intervals or this long slow run?
Exactly.
Is that sort of what you mean?
100%. Like I'll pick intervals every day. Like I know I'll be good at them. If I've not trained hard for like a month, 6 weeks, I'll go down to the track and I know I'll do okay in the intervals. If I haven't done that in the aerobic, I'm going to be miles behind the guys. Yeah. So, but he was like that. He was trained aerobically. He ran 3:33. So this isn't a thing of like just being fast, like, or being long distance, but he was like a 5K runner in the end. Like the way Jakob Ingebrigtsen is. He's not going to do really well at the 400.
Right.
They took him, he went into the UK training camp for a year because it's like, you got your potential for, say, in 2009. They were doing loads of that neuromuscular work. So it was all like 6 by a K, hard enough, 5 by a mile, all like track sessions, basically, with like hill sessions. So much less aerobic work. He was running terribly. He got basically kicked out of that program, or he kind of left, went back to the coach. And within first year he came on, that was 2011. And then 2012, he qualified for the Olympics because he was doing the type of work that works for him. And like with that guy, if we were doing intervals, I would be beating him. And he could, at that time, he was able to beat me by at least 10 seconds in a, like, we're not even in the same freaking city in terms of like ability at that time.
So in a training week, let's say this was a training week, again, sort of around your prime, whenever you consider that. What would you consider to be sort of what maybe is like your weekly run volume at that point, and you can drop us into whatever point in the season you want, and then where in terms of like intensity to volume, like I've heard you talk about like the 80-20 rule before, for example. How much of that do you consider to be more intensive training? How much of it is more, again, like easier zone or just like aerobic training?
Perfect. Well, I'll tell you what I do now, because I'm still at a decent level, like say, sub 14 for 5K. So Monday is like 70 minutes. So like 10 miles, easy. Tuesday might be 70 minutes with like the last 30 minutes at like zone 2. So that's like still chatting away, but just a little bit above easy running. Still you should be still having a conversation, but you're just concentrated. And we might do like 5 hills afterwards. I really recommend strides. Even if you have to cut your run short, it just keeps good variety and it keeps you injury free. Wednesday, we do a workout. 90% of the year, maybe 85% of the year for me, it's going to be something that's time based, because I'm working. So I don't want to have it in my head that I have to hit certain times, at least not hard times. So it's going to be like 5 by 7 minutes at marathon pace heart rate. We do it, but you can just pick the pace. 4 by 6 minutes at lactic threshold pace. Could be like 7 minutes at lactic threshold. 3 by 30-second hills. 3 sets of that. Something along those lines. Thursday will be 70 minutes again, nice and easy. Friday will be off. Saturday will be some other session, some other workout. Like, so could be hills and tempo, could be whatever. And then Sunday will be a long run. So 2 hard workouts in the week plus a long run. And then the others is your like staple running. That's what I do now. What I would have done in the past, when I would have had much more time, I would have done 2 runs in a day. So Monday would have been 50 minutes. And that would be, we call them like zone 2. So zone 1 is like recovery. Zone 2 is like that first spike in lactate. You just get a lactate test, costs about $100, maybe $200, given inflation, given circumstances. Everybody's been affected by this war in the Ukraine. Honestly, I get a haircut and they're like, oh yeah, due to circumstances, it's gone up. It's like, what circumstances? You tell me these circumstances. So Monday would be that steady run. E2, again, it's not hard. It feels like 60% effort maybe. And then 30 minutes easy in the evening with like your Pilates. I still do Pilates once or twice a week. Tuesday, we would do triple day Tuesday. So it would be a workout in the morning, which would be more like track or hills. You then would do a gym session in the afternoon. So you'd go for a sleep, get your dinner, and then go for a gym session around 2, relax for the couple of hours, do some work if you had it, and then about 5 or 6 you'd go for a 30-minute run. Wednesday you would do just 1 run, easy, 60 minutes. Thursday would be tempo, gym or Pilates, and then a run in the evening, 30 minutes easy in the evening to shake out. Friday would just be a very easy run, like 50 minutes, like we call it like a shuffle basically. Saturday would be depending on the time, right? So what we used to do was you'd have a focus for what the goal was. So say if it's indoor and I'm like, okay, I want to be a good 1500 meter runner in the summer, but right now I want to be good at like 3K. Or say if there's no indoor, you're going to go in January, February, I'm going to be like 5K fit. And then March, April, I'll drop down to be like 3K, really fit over the 3K. And then March, April, and then from May, June, July, it's like 1,500 meters. So you just block what's the ultimate goal at the moment. So with that, then there'll be 3 sessions, 3 workouts in the week. Thursday will be your longer. So say if it's 3K that you're getting ready for 5K, I'll say 5K, it'll just be easier. You'll have the Tuesday workout would be shorter. So say if it was 5K, that would be a 3K type session. That was like moderately hard. Okay, so not super hard, but the paces would be 3K. So it could be like 8 by 400 meters at 3K pace off a minute.
So you're just saying you're building your paces off your 3K pace.
The target is a 5K. So you're doing one workout at quicker than the target pace.
Right.
That could be your 3K session. The Thursday will be one workout at above the target pace. So that would be like a 10K type session. Feeling easier though, like not like flat out. And then on Saturday, that would be a hard workout at the target pace. So because the goal is like being good at 5K, it'd be a hard 5K session. Maybe like 5 or 6 or 7 by a K at 5K pace, just making something up. And then Sunday will be a long run, 90 minutes. Then we're back to Monday.
You're basically saying like you're framing paces, like some of them a little bit quicker, some of them are a little bit slower, so that you're kind of, and some are at that pace, so that way you're getting like
always
multiple systems. Is that what you're saying?
That's what you're trying to do. You're always one below, one hard at, one a little bit above. So like that goes, say if I was doing 10K, if that was the goal, say it's like cross country in the winter, like November, December, we'll have one hard 10K session workout. We'll have one easier like lactic threshold half marathon type workout, and you'll have one 5K workout / 3K to keep your speed up. And then you transition, say 5K is the goal, hard 5K session, slightly easier 3K session, slightly easier 10K session. Until we're in the summer where it's a hard 1,500 meter session. Like now, I mean hard, easier 3K session. Now, if you think of that was a speed session a while ago, now it's the distance session, and one 800 meter session to keep your speed. So you're always like, that's one thing I felt like people were too focused on one thing. That's what we do at this time, but you should always have that balance. Especially if you're elite track, you should always be doing something above, something hard at, something below. And that's something a lot of coaches don't do correctly.
Yeah. Do you think that, and this might have been, a job of a coach or someone else, so that's fine if that's the case, but are you more concerned with the volume of like a particular session? And then again, maybe that changes throughout time, or are you more concerned about like your total volume throughout the week, if that makes sense? Like per session versus like a more of a global take on like your training?
Yeah, you have a kind of set, like the other easier days will kind of make up the volume. I was never overly concerned with the mileage, really. They were just kind of recovery days, and you're trying to get to a set threshold, say 50, 60 miles a week.
Do you think that's wrong for people who are more recreational runners to like really focus on their weekly mileage?
Yeah, 100%. Because it's junk miles. It doesn't matter. Like if you're looking to be fit, like, and you're not doing say 2 sessions per week, you're at nothing. You're at absolutely nothing. Going out just jogging, it's like, specific adaptation to impose demand. Your body will get used to that over time. So you're not changing. So you just need to it's better for injury and muscular thing as well. You need on a Wednesday, on a Saturday to be doing some kind of workout. Then going out every day and just jogging a certain amount.
Yeah. So like if you go out and jog every day, like there's certainly a point to having aerobic work in there. But if all you ever do is jog, like all you're ever going to be able to do is jog.
Yeah, but like again, an aerobic work, like that's the lowest form of it, really, if we be honest. Like, because aerobic work for me would be try build up to like say 4 by 7 minutes at marathon pace or slightly below it with 2 minutes of a jog. The amount of distance you're going to cover in that is going to be so much more than just going out for like say your 60 minutes. Yeah. Even though the workout's only going to be 60, 70 minutes.
How much of that do you think is about like the specific biomechanics and range of motion of someone's gait being very specific to the race pace? Like their gait will change as they go slower, so it won't transfer over as well to the shorter events? Or do you think that's more of a product of like they just didn't have maybe the energy systems that are necessary?
Bit of both. Like there's three things that make you good at running. One is running economy. So it's like how smooth you are at those paces. So again, if you don't practice those paces, because even if you're an aerobic athlete, while I say you shouldn't overly focus on it, you should still do easier sessions than that, have longer recoveries between race pace distance. So don't just do a short recovery, you'll fry your nervous system. So you're trying to go longer recovery, feel easy, but do run the race pace. Or just do strides at race pace.
I was just going to say, is that where like strides come into play?
100%, 100%. Like I've seen loads of aerobic runners do well with just aerobic sessions and then 20-second, 4x20-second hills afterwards, or strides on the track, 200 meters, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, just to keep that going. So you do need to keep that running economy. For me, I need to really work that. But then lactic threshold, which you improve through your energy systems and your lactic threshold work. And last is VO2 max, which you can't do too much about. So it's just a combination of those two, basically, because the third is not changeable.
One of the things I think I have to ask you before I let you go is about technique. And there's a lot out there on running technique.
Yeah,
and
I think
obviously, everyone sort of has their own little bit of gait, their own little things that, if a running coach got a hold of them, they would want to tweak. What are like your thoughts on like what's like the quote unquote like ideal running technique?
There's no ideal running stride. Listen to me, people. Do not try change your running stride. You will hurt yourself. I have seen this so often. I knew a guy, he came second in the Europeans. Irish, unheard of. The only thing that was more unheard of was the guy who beat him in the Europeans was literally his neighbor. So not only this guy could not win a county championships, he couldn't win a city championships, and yet he's coming second in the Europeans. The guy who won had a majestic stride on his toes, just really natural. The guy who came second was like really determined, changed his stride to mimic that. So he went on his toes. Now, he did well enough for a while, but at 20, he had a double Achilles surgery and never really ran again. Because if you heel strike, there's a reason you heel strike. It's like your body doesn't think, here, listen, you know what I'm going to do for Owen today? I'm going to make him run like a donkey, just for banter. It doesn't do that. There's you have a weakness or you have some kind of limitation that it feels like this is easier. So the only thing you should do is develop the building blocks that allow you to move. So get your mobility better, get like your activation and your stability better, like exercises on your feet, like a single leg deadlift, getting the glutes working, like get the calf strong. And then now, because this does get, there was a guy he was a running coach, and I can be slamming people because that's just funny. It's like, it's like some people, it's where, like we've been around for I don't know how many years, like, but it's millions. I don't know how long we're around. And it's like, well, what did everybody else do? Were we all just waiting for this 20-minute YouTube video to come along to tell us to run on our toes that we couldn't work it out? Like, it's like, here, listen, evolution is helping us on this one. But what that guy was saying, and I totally agree, was you can improve it. Like do like A skips, do like technique drills and cues like head up, cues like run relaxed, cues like, make it feel effortless. Like imagine you're running on a cloud, run barefoot, say, so you naturally change, not too much, like 5-10 minutes max of that. There are little things you can do. Run over like unsurfaced, like, not like, what's unlevel ground.
Yep.
So, cause it kind of, if you're doing a stride, just make sure, don't break an ankle. But say if you put down mats at different levels, that'll just get your body used to trying to move at a different way, and it'll naturally kind of engage more. don't go out there and go, oh yeah, you should try run on your toes, or squeeze your glutes or squeeze your core. You know, you can, if you're going up a hill, shorten your stride a little bit, lean in, pump your arms, focus your head looking down a track, for example. I don't mind, there are very good running cues, but the more external they are, the more like it's just run smooth, run fast, you know, like little things like this will help. Do not try run on your toes. Run on your toes is the worst one by far. The other is like head steady, you know, shorten your stride up a hill, lengthen slightly down a hill. They're fine. They're just actually good techniques, but just focus on the building blocks so much more and you'll not get into trouble.
Yeah, it's almost like you don't get to make the excuse of like not having great run mechanics if you also don't do the homework that's necessary to have them. Like if you're not doing soft tissue work and make sure that you have the range of motion that you need, if your core is not strong, like you're saying, the building blocks, if you haven't done your homework for that stuff, then you're probably not going to run well either way. So don't really try to alter your technique, rather work on the building blocks, focus on some of these external cues, and then it should clean up on its own. Is that sort of what you're saying?
Exactly. Like you, Ben, I'd be a big proponent of like, say, you know, functional exercises, functional movement. And we would do like the movement screens with people. And I had a guy, he tore his hamstring. He was a sprinter. And say we would do a lot of that kind of building block work just to get his hamstring back.
Right.
His coach came back up to me, had all the books on movement screening. He's an intense dude. And he's like, what did you do with X? Because he's come back and I've been trying for like years to get him to do these right drills and to run a certain way. And now he's just getting it. And I was like, well, yeah, he didn't have the building blocks. It's like, you know, I have a 2-year-old nephew. Like I could scream at him all day to write me a poem. He doesn't know the letters yet.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, no, but why? Like, do you see John down the road? Yeah, John's 20. Do you know, John has the building blocks. You can't just replicate it, as you said. Work on the building blocks and then the rest will come. And if it doesn't come, our subconscious is so much more powerful than our conscious. There's a reason you're running the way you are.
Yeah, I think that's so good. I think the more I know, I think that statement is more true. So, for example, like say there's somebody in there, they have like this ugly run gait where like they're you know, have this weird, you know, strike with only their one side. It's like, well, maybe they have extra inflammation in that knee and they're trying to find a way around that pain and that inflammation. And now like this is a result of that. And like literally that's probably from like, you know, if you, again, your subconscious is figuring out a way that you can still move,
100%.
Work around that pain. And that's probably the best way that you could move, even though that's not a great way to run.
Yeah. And it's like, it's not to, exactly. And it's not to like ignore that knee pain or not work on, say, the mobility or the stability, doing single leg work. So you strengthen that side. And sometimes it is just like rebalancing the person, even if that's the way they run. You know, like sometimes our thing is the way, like say if someone swings, or you could naturally just be tight in certain ways. It's just about being able to get out of that position. Like I have quite a large arch in my back when I run, but all I practice is with my Pilates is making sure I can get out of that.
Right.
And now that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to give my body the possibility. It's like, listen, you can stabilize your pelvis in a lot of different ways. If you still feel like that's the best way, you go at it, buddy. But I'm just going to give you here's a little extra tool. And what you find is over time, you won't sense it, but people say, yeah, you kind of run slightly better, or you can just get out of that position so you don't hurt yourself long term.
How do you feel about intentionally or trying to alter your breathing when you're running?
There was a study that showed that people who tried to improve their running technique versus people who tried to improve their breathing versus people who just looked at a TV as they ran, the last group had better running economy than the other two. So again, I do it a bit. I try breathe or relax, but the best thing you can do is just look ahead and run, or focus on someone just ahead of you and just run. Bob Atara does a lot in golf. He's like, when lads are in their heads thinking about their swing, he's just like, you've been swinging the club for years. Just focus down where you want to hit it and just hit it. And it's the same with running. A lot of times it's like, trust your subconscious. We've been doing this a million years. We did not need a guru. It's like your grandparents are like, if only I had a guru, I would have known how to run. We just need to give it we do know more. We can give the building blocks. Sometimes you can feel like you'll naturally, like, don't judge yourself. Like if you're trying to breathe and you're relaxing, that's fine. Do that. But I never would consciously think about it. If I'm running and I'm like, okay, relax my breathing a little bit, that's fine. Trying to stay relaxed. Like, again, I like the external ones. Like, all right, try physically just feel relaxed as opposed to telling myself what to do. Okay, just try relax here. Naturally, you're going to breathe. I'm not going to say, breathe in, breathe out. I'm just like, try stay relaxed. And that's it. Just give that subconscious cue. It'll work.
Yeah. What I've found is for a lot of people, if I do give them more like conscious breath work or, something where I really want them focusing on their breathing, that's helpful. And sometimes that's maybe more helpful for someone who's a little bit dysfunctional in how they breathe. But when you go to compete or when you go to actually do your session, you want to kind of turn that off and just
100%.
allow your physiology to do what it wants to do. And that way you don't sort of like hamstring yourself.
But what you're doing there, Ben, I would class that as building blocks. Like in easier times, it's the same with strides. Like you can work on a few things like, head up. Like if you say even working on your toes, if you're doing
exaggerate something a little bit.
Yeah. Try get on your toes a little bit just for a stride, but don't consciously then do that, as you said, when you're running all the time. But the same, you can work on your breathing, like trying to get like more belly breaths. Like I love that with meditation. So you practice, breathing those techniques, and that's teaching a basic thing. And then, as you said, in the race, in the run, you just normally run.
Yeah. You're not thinking about belly breathing as you
go
around the track at 60 seconds a lap.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I think that's super helpful is like, again, you don't have an excuse. I'm kind of preaching to people now, but you don't have the excuse to like not be able to do anything. But when you actually, in terms of like doing your homework, setting your building blocks in place, but then when you actually go to do the thing, like just shut it off, try to be relaxed, try to be smooth, like you keep saying.
100%. Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what you should do.
All right. Last question for you. So I think one of the things that I've heard you say and talk about is like putting some, maybe unfair pressure on yourself as a younger athlete. So let's say we have somebody in there, just sort of a aspiring up and coming athlete. They're a little bit younger, maybe someone who's sort of like your former self. What advice would you have for them? Maybe to, number one, just like allow them to elicit their best performance, but also like not sacrifice the joy for their sport.
Can I curse on this? No, let's go.
Go for it.
Well, no, I'll just keep it clean. If I had a book, honestly, I kind of want to write this, but I'm not like a psychologist or anything. But it'd be called "No One Gives an S." That's the title of the book, because if you can get that into your head, you'll relax so much more. So nearly try go through it as a thought exercise. What if I ran terribly? What would happen? Like, and write the worst possible scenario. Like, like my friends abandon me, my parents tell me they don't love me. Write it down, because you'll see on the page how ridiculous it sounds. And if it doesn't sound ridiculous, it's like, that's their issue. Like, that's their trauma to deal with. That's not you. But I would like physically write it down. Like, what do you think is the worst thing that can happen? Because, as I said, not the worst, like mentally or anything, but just running terribly for me kind of solidified that. And that then allowed me to enjoy it so much more. The second thing is, I spent that whole year. Now, I'll tell you, like, I was so into it. Well, I went to like psychologists, and I was writing like times I wanted to run on my shoes and looking in a mirror, like literally, look, you can do this, you can do this. And then the next year, I had a new coach. I was training more appropriately, and this was fitter. I thought I was fit the year before. Honestly, I did. But I was training more appropriately, and I was in no way confident going into the first race. And I bet like a guy, Guy Learmonth, loads of guys who went to the Olympics and World Championships, and I won the race. And I was coming home and I just said, do you know what? Nearly all psychology is a load of crap, because if you're fit, you'll run well. And it doesn't matter if you tell yourself you won't, you'll just run well. Once the gun goes, it's not like a team sport where you can constantly think. And if you're not that fit, it doesn't matter what your mindset is or anything. And I really believe that. So what I would say to the person is, one, try get the perspective that it doesn't matter. Like, just get in touch with the feelings that you have, because you have to admit it. Like, it wasn't like I was like, oh, I'm super anxious. If someone had asked, I would have said, no, I know no one cares. Like, oh yeah, no, I'm doing it for myself. But really, somewhere subconsciously, that wasn't the case. Otherwise, why would you get nervous? You know, you're only doing it for yourself. Like you want to do your best, but it's like, you're not, there's like, you know, there's stuff of when you're younger. And then the second is, even if you feel nervous, it's like there's an Arabian saying, I think, a maktub, and it means it's written. Like, I honestly believe like what's going to happen that day will happen. So you don't need a positive mindset. It doesn't matter if you're anxious or you're relaxed. It doesn't matter anything. If your fitness on the day will show true. And if you just have persistence, like even if it doesn't, I feel it's like a neuromuscular thing, or the slight variations that cause that, not that like you taught it. It's like, you're just going to run how you run. And I tell you, I've slept brilliant and ran crap. I've slept crap and ran brilliant. I've slept brilliant and ran brilliant. I've slept crap and ran crap. I'm 36. I've been running for 20 years. When you get to my age, you get to do all the variations. I felt brilliant before a race. I had good positive energy and I ran like a donkey. I felt like, oh my God, I can't wait to get home, and ran crap. I felt brilliant before a race. For that mile, I never felt better. In warm up, I put on the first song. I was like, sun is coming down. This feels class. And I ran class. But if I was chasing that feeling, you'd be putting tension. I've also felt like terrible and ran really well. Like, once you get to the day, you've tried your best. That's all you can do. And now it's like, you know, what's the musical, Les Miserables, you know, one day more. Like, one day more we'll discover what this God in heaven has in store. That's it. It's like, it's already done, and you're going to find out what the result is. So don't stress it. Like, again, if you feel nervous, that's fine. You're going to run. If you feel relaxed, you're going to run. Just be aware of your feelings. They'll all pass anyway. And then, as I said, just to do that work, write out what you think of the worst thing that can happen if you never ran well again. And you'd be surprised by the answers, I think. And it's not going to happen over time. I think that's an evolution.
That's really good advice. I think, yeah, you know, I think there's going to be a lot of people that resonates with. So thank you. And thanks for doing this today. I appreciate it.
Ben, I really enjoyed this. Yeah. Hopefully people got it. If people want to have a book, it's free. It's called How to Get to the Line in the Best Shape Possible. Just like injury, just a couple of injury stuff, things on training like threshold, Fartlek. People can get that for free at Everard, EVERARD, Pilates.com/book. So everardpilates.com.
I'll link to it in the show notes for everybody and on YouTube.
Great. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks a million, Ben. I really enjoyed that. Thanks so much.
Hey, it's Ben again. Thanks for listening today. To be completely honest, it's been really rewarding to have people who listen to the show regularly reach out to me, whether they have a question about training or just to say hey. So if you haven't done that yet, do it. I'm pretty good about getting back to people, and you can feel free to email me, ben@zorfitness.com, or message me on Instagram @zorfitness. And graciously, I've had some people reach out to me and ask how they can support the show. Number one way that you can support the show if you are a regular listener is just by rating the show. Most apps have a platform where you can actually rate it, and on Apple Podcasts, you can write a review as well. This is super helpful in having other coaches and athletes find the podcast, but also just having it grow and for me to continue to want to put out more and more content. Also, I'm going to be posting more full episodes of the Fitness Movement to our YouTube channel. So if you're someone who actually enjoys seeing my face when I talk, you can head over to YouTube and subscribe if you please. And if you're someone who is watching on YouTube, you have the ability to like our videos, but then you can also comment on the video if you have questions about the episode or if you want to suggest a topic for a future episode. And lastly, if you're someone who really does value what we're putting out, I would encourage you to hire a coach. For me, coaching is the bulk of my job, and it's what I believe I do best. So if you're an athlete or a coach looking to up your fitness game, be sure to reach out. You can message me on Instagram @ZorFitness or email me, ben@zorfitness.com. Thanks again for listening today, and as always, stay the course.